antología, sino etnología, memoria, oral history o documentos, archives, cualquier tipo de patrimonio cultural. Nació en 1998, por tanto llevamos 25 años, que se dice pronto, se dice rápido. Es software libre y open source. Nuestra licencia es AGPL, la versión 3, o sea, es lo más abierto que existe, o sea, es la versión de licencia más abierta que existe a día de hoy. Esta es la página web del proyecto y nuestro código en GitHub. La idea base es que los archivos y la web tienen que colaborar, tienen que trabajar juntos. Esto conlleva que los archivos no pueden estar trabajados y los catálogos no pueden estar trabajados en local, porque siempre vamos a querer publicar y a día de hoy la web es claramente y fundamental para publicar lo que son las colecciones. Entonces, si tenemos un catálogo local y la web separada, pues tenemos un problema de comunicar el catálogo con la web. ¿Por qué? Pues porque tenemos dos sistemas que hay que mantener. La web es primordial para los museos y de repente la web se convierte en el sitio donde se actualizan los datos, mientras que nuestro sistema de trabajo se queda desactualizado. Hay una presión por publicar y esa presión por publicar hace que los catálogos se queden desactualizados. Entonces, la web y los sistemas de gestión han de trabajar juntos. Voy a contar un poco la historia, va a ser muy rápida, ¿vale? Porque 25 años resumidos es un poco complicado. Pero, bueno, el proyecto nace para un proyecto muy concreto del Museo Valenciano de Etnología. Yo estaba trabajando en la universidad y se me acerca el director del museo y me propone un proyecto de recuperar la memoria tradicional valenciana. Querían hacer 3.000 entrevistas entre 1 hora y 2 horas a la sociedad tradicional valenciana, para preservar la memoria de la sociedad tradicional valenciana. Querían acceder a esta información. Esto es una zona en Valencia, que son los serranos, pero en 1998 todavía podíamos recuperar aquesta memoria, todavía podíamos acercarnos a las tradiciones y a la manera de vida de la sociedad tradicional. 1998. Estamos hablando de 5.000 horas de vídeo, ¿vale? Cuando a mí me propusieron el proyecto, me dijeron, ¿cómo podemos manejar 5.000 horas de vídeo? ¿Es posible tener un sistema que gestione estas 5.000 horas de vídeo? Claro, solo tienes dos contestaciones, o sí o no, ¿vale? Pues yo dije sí, ¿vale? No sabía dónde me estaba metiendo. una locura. Recordad que en 1998 este era el teléfono más vendido, ¿vale? Esta era la página de una compañía que estaba a punto de desaparecer. Esta es una página de la compañía que estaba comiéndoselo todo y no existía YouTube, no existía Google, no existía Facebook, no existía Twitter, no existía nada de lo que conocemos a día de hoy. O sea, realmente era un reto importante, un reto muy importante. Bueno, en 6 meses ya teníamos una versión que era funcional y se veía así. Bueno, es un poco precaria, ¿vale? A día de hoy ya no están así. El tema es que el proyecto se cortó porque el director dejó el proyecto por temas políticos, pero nosotros seguimos desarrollando la aplicación. Entonces, a día de hoy, pues ya no es aquella herramienta rudimentaria de hace 25 años, sino os he puesto algunas de las características, no están todas, ¿vale? Pero bueno, os podéis ver que el listado es largo. ¿Cómo funciona Dédalo? Bueno, nosotros tenemos una abstracción. Dédalo está controlado por una antología. En 2012 decidimos pasar de un modelo SQL a un modelo no SQL. Y a partir de ese momento decidimos que toda la aplicación sería controlada por una ontología. ¿Cómo funciona la ontología? Bueno, pasamos de lo que serían los conceptos, en este caso os he puesto persona y el nombre, los abstraemos con un código, que en este caso RSC 197, etc. Y desde esa abstracción lo que podemos es devolver el concepto, generar definiciones, traducciones, incluso añadir código de programación a ese código concreto. Por tanto, para poder resolver la abstracción, tenemos un código que se ejecuta y que resuelve esa abstracción. Esto es bastante más complejo de lo que he explicado, pero básicamente es esto. Por tanto, para resolver el nombre de Carlos Pérez, necesitamos decodificar la información que tenemos en la base de datos, llamar a la ontología volverá a llamar a otras partes de la ontología, y así hasta que se resuelva el nombre de la persona. Y esto nos posibilita que los datos no estén fijos, no estén rígidos, no sean rígidos, sino que sean flexibles. Y esto nos permite convertir a estándares, nos permite exportar a diversos formatos, nos permite generar bases de datos separadas con datos de publicación. O sea, es fantástico. Bueno, esto es una pequeña introducción. Normalmente suelo tardar 4 días en explicar todo. En 20 minutos va a ser un poco rápido, pero vamos allá. Os voy a enseñar cómo va. Bueno, dédalo, colegas, dedo. El interface es web. Desde el principio decidimos que el interface era web, la tecnología era web. Por tanto, los usuarios se conectan a través de un interface web. Y lo que tenemos son los registros, ¿vale? Y los registros son editables, ¿vale? Pero Dédalo es multidioma de verdad, por ejemplo. Y entonces, por ejemplo, si yo escribo oro, gold en inglés, ¿vale? Me va a reconocer que es oro, ¿vale? Porque Dédalo is full multilanguage. I don't have any. One moment. I don't want to open. No. Es. I don't have any field. Sí, por favor. Okay. Perdón. Bueno, quería mostrarles que Dédalo realmente es una plataforma multidioma. ¿Vale? Con traducciones a varios idiomas. ¿Vale? De verdad. Ok, con procesos de traducción automática dentro de la propia aplicación. Y, por ejemplo, tenemos una visión de lo que está traducido, lo que no está traducido. ¿Vale? Los lenguajes están controlados por un tesauro de lenguajes que a día de hoy tiene unos 21.000 lenguajes. Y, no es que Dédalo esté traducido a los 21.000 lenguajes, sino que puede manejar 21.000 lenguajes. Y si fuera necesario añadir algún lenguaje más, sería expandir este tesauro. O sea, no tenemos un límite de la cantidad de lenguajes que se pueden utilizar dentro de lo que es la aplicación. ¿Vale? Os voy a mostrar el tesauro de lenguajes. ¿Vale? Y bueno, podríamos estar desplegando, ¿vale? Hasta 21.000 familias de lenguajes organizadas. Otra de las cosas interesantes que tenemos como gestor de patrimonio cultural es que todos los movimientos y todo lo que ocurre dentro de la aplicación es grabado y es recuperable. Por tanto, si yo elimino información, ¿vale?, yo puedo recuperar cualquier estado anterior y saber quién lo ha hecho, ¿vale?, en qué momento lo ha hecho, aplicar el cambio y revertir los cambios. Además, los cambios también son comentables, es decir, si hacemos un cambio dentro de un dato, podemos dejar un registro de por qué hacemos este cambio. Esto es muy útil cuando tenemos grandes organizaciones con grandes equipos de trabajo y mucha gente está cambiando los datos. ¿Por qué se ha cambiado este dato? Bueno, pues podemos decir, este dato, lo de las pantallitas es... Ok, is here. Puedo añadir un comentario y dejar esta anotación. He hecho un cambio en este dato porque estaba haciendo una presentación, ¿vale? Quedará registrado que yo he hecho ese cambio, ese borrado y esa recuperación de ese dato. Más cosas interesantes. Nosotros trabajamos materiales audiovisuales desde el principio. Por ejemplo, tenemos un sistema y tenemos tools específicos para cada uno de los campos de estudio de patrimonio cultural. Por ejemplo, para historia oral tenemos tools, herramientas, que permiten la transcripción y con etiquetas interactivas que te permiten ir a puntos de la entrevista, generar fragmentos y relacionarlos con el tesauro, generar notas dentro de las entrevistas, decir quién está hablando en cada momento, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. O sea, no solamente es un sistema de registro o inventario, sino que podemos analizar información dentro de la propia aplicación. Os he enseñado un tool para historia oral, pero podemos tener otros tools específicos para, por ejemplo, numismática. Correcto. ¿Vale? En el que podemos hacer una búsqueda. Esto es una descripción de leyendas. Entonces buscaré ok, y nos permite generar leyendas con caracteres ASCII, o sea, normalizados dentro del UTF, o no normalizados, como podría ser las leyendas ibéricas. Esto también está controlado por un tesauro, que os voy a mostrar. Por ejemplo, el paleohispánico meridional, ¿vale?, que tiene jerarquizadas cada una de las vocales, sílabas, etcétera, 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 etcétera. ¿Vale? Como podéis ver, Dédalo es multitesauro también, o sea, tenemos tesauros de idiomas, tesauros que pueden ser epigráficos, tesauros de materiales, tesauros... Se pueden generar cualquier tipo de tesauros. Por defecto tenemos también tesauros topónimos, con alrededor de unos 147 países normalizados, alrededor de 2,5 millones de topónimos localizados y jerarquizados. Por ejemplo, en España, pues bueno, como podéis ver, tenemos que esto es una comunidad autónoma, una provincia, un municipio, etcétera, 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 etcétera. ¿Vale? Los tesauros dentro de Dédalo se utilizan para muchísimas cosas, no solamente para toponimia, no solamente para epigrafía, lenguajes. Se utilizan, por ejemplo, para analizar lo que os estaba mostrando antes de historia oral. Vamos a ver. cómo localizamos fragmentos dentro de una entrevista, cómo indexamos un fragmento de una entrevista, qué ha dicho esta persona en este momento. Por ejemplo, aquí sería nacer. Y aquí tendríamos dentro del tesauro, ¿vale?, los fragmentos de las entrevistas que habrán de otros familiares que tienen que relación con nacer. Vale. Los fragmentos, estos fragmentos son recuperables después en la web. Y Dédalo cortará los vídeos en tiempo real para mostrar solamente el fragmento que ha sido indexado. No te va a mostrar la entrevista de 2 horas, ¿vale?, sino que te va a mostrar el fragmento. Ok, no me da mucho más tiempo, os voy a mostrar etnología, ¿vale? Quería mostraros que, por ejemplo, las imágenes... Las últimas... Oh. Las imágenes, por ejemplo, guardan la versión original de la imagen en la calidad que sea y en el formato que sea, ya sea un NEF que sale de una cámara, ya sea un TIFF, ya sea un PSD, ya sea lo que sea de la cámara. Dédalo automáticamente va a convertir en versiones para la web directamente, y lo mismo que hacemos con las imágenes, lo hacemos con los vídeos, lo hacemos con los PDFs, lo hacemos con todo, ¿vale? O sea, se guardan los originales de cámara, se guardan los originales que salen de la cámara. La idea es preservar todos los materiales, ¿vale?, en la mejor calidad posible. No trabajamos con versiones, o sea, sí, trabajamos con versiones calidad para la web, pero realmente almacenamos los originales. En este caso, una imagen de 129 megabytes. Y solamente para cerrar, ¿cómo se ve esto? Porque esto es el gestor, ¿vale? ¿Cómo publicamos esta información? Bueno, pues cada uno se construye la web como ellos quieren. Hay un gestor, se publica la información es transformada y hay una API que permite la conexión para poder generar el espacio de la web. Y en la web pues es mucho más amable, ¿vale? Podemos entrar, hacer búsquedas que a los usuarios les resultan más cómodas. Podemos ver, por ejemplo, de mujer y memoria. Este sería el de Quart de Poblet, que este es un museo de etnología. Y podríamos ver el catálogo. Y no os he mostrado de arqueología porque están en mantenimiento. Ahora mismo están en mantenimiento. Entonces no podemos entrar. Pero, bueno, este sería el catálogo de arqueología del Museo de Prehistoria de Valencia, que está gestionado también con Dédalo. Y, para terminar, decir que estamos en nuestro 25 aniversario y que tenemos un evento a finales de octubre, 2 días para discutir y hablar de estos temas en profundidad, porque esto ha sido un primer vistazo muy por encima de lo que Dédalo hace. Si queréis apuntaros, se puede asistir online, ¿vale? Estáis todos invitados. Tenemos una hora donde discutimos pues cómo tiene que ser Dédalo, cuál es el futuro de Dédalo, qué necesitamos implementar, cómo necesitamos ir cambiándolo. Nosotros estamos abiertos, bienvenidos. Todo el mundo que quiera trabajar con Dédalo es muy bienvenido, ¿vale? Y nada más. Gracias.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and I admire your courage. Hacer una demostración en vivo es un poco peligroso. Siempre. It's always a bit dangerous doing a live demonstration, so congratulations for doing that. And we have time for some questions. If you'd like to ask some questions. I know. Yeah, I should point out that I have some Swiss chocolate here, and anybody who asks a question gets some Swiss chocolate. So that's a bribe.
Thank you. The Swiss chocolate is a bonus. Really great work. Thank you for presenting it. Looks really interesting. I'm curious if you could maybe expand a little bit on how you manage geospatial data or integration with GIS.
Ok. Los datos dentro de Dédalo están extraídos por una ontología, lo que he explicado antes. Ok. Go to the presentation. Vale. Todos los datos están trabajados en JSON, ¿vale? Con un modelo NoSQL. Tenemos una extracción, como he explicado antes, en la que sacamos lo que son los conceptos de los datos y estos datos son interpretados siempre, ¿vale? La representación visual de los datos se realiza, tenemos separado lo que es la parte servidor de la parte cliente. El servidor llama a la ontología y resuelve el dato. Y una vez que está resuelto, este dato es enviado al cliente, que será el que va a procesar el dato visual final. Tenemos una API en medio entre servidor y cliente que nos permite separar lo que sería la lógica de trabajo interna del servidor de la parte de visualización del dato. Esto nos permite tener diferentes servidores con información compartida, por ejemplo, la toponimia o la bibliografía, porque hay proyectos que tienen bibliografía compartida. Un proyecto de arqueología que tiene la misma bibliografía que otro proyecto de arqueología. Entonces, cuando esto ocurre, lo que hacemos es tener servidores diferentes, servidor privado y servidor público, donde en el servidor público hay datos compartidos. Cuando alguien actualiza ese servidor, los proyectos se conectan, aunque tiene su servidor privado, y permite manejar datos compartidos y datos sin compartir. No sé si he contestado del todo la pregunta. I don't know. ¿No? ¿Es ok?
Hola, muchas gracias. Mi pregunta es un poquito sobre la base tecnológica que necesita tu herramienta. Me imagino que después de 25 años has estado cambiando continuamente de esta base tecnológica. No sé, ¿nos podrías platicar un poquito acerca de cómo ha sido esa evolución y ahorita actualmente qué utilizas?
Vale, el proyecto nace web desde el minuto cero. ¿Vale? Esto yo creo que fue un gran acierto que no era claro en 1998. Al principio era todo muy rudimentario, muy rudimentario. Las conexiones post que hacíamos con el servidor eran prácticamente manuales, ¿vale? Al poco tiempo cambiamos a MySQL, un modelo MySQL, PHP, ¿vale? Con tecnologías de software libre. Ese modelo SQL se mantuvo durante bastante tiempo. Lo que pasa es que empezó a crecer y era un poco ingobernable. ¿Cómo llegamos a tener cientos de tablas con diferentes modelos de datos? Y era impracticable. Hacer un cambio era muerte. Entonces, en ese momento, eso es 2012 más o menos, Postgres dio un salto a cambio a NoSQL y con una versión beta de Postgres empezamos a cambiar el modelo cambiando hacia la ontología. Ese es el modelo que a día de hoy seguimos manteniendo, seguimos trabajando con Postgres. La parte de servidores es PHP Pero estamos moviendo mucha parte de lógica de servidor al cliente, por esto que he comentado, porque queremos conectar diferentes servidores de diferentes, diferentes clientes con diferentes servidores a la vez. Entonces, la base tecnológica es Postgres, PHP, Apache, por supuesto, y cliente JavaScript, CSS, por supuesto. ¿Vale? Y tenemos dos APIs. Esto no lo he dicho antes. Tenemos un API para conectar el sistema de gestión y un API para conectar las webs. Son dos APIs separados. Porque la publicación que hacemos publicación a MySQL. O sea, podemos hacer una conversión del dato que lo tenemos abstraído a una versión más rígida, más acabada, que no tiene capas de abstracción, mucho más fácil para recuperar los datos, mucho más ágil a la hora de recuperar los datos. Esto permite hacer algo que no he mostrado, que es, por ejemplo, parse. Esto es un análisis en tiempo real de los datos de una ceca de producción monetaria, en la que tenemos todos los tipos, ¿vale? Con sus análisis de pesos, diámetros, y esto se ha calculado en tiempo real. Esto es porque la base de datos pública, o sea, la publicación, está resuelto ya los datos. Los datos abstraídos están en el sistema interno. Entonces, cuando publicamos ya resuelto. Entonces, es todo muy rápido. La recuperación es muy flexible y muy rápida. Nos permite miles de datos ser analizados en tiempo real. ¿Vale? Si tuviéramos que mantener la abstracción para poder hacer esto, ¿vale? Porque aquí tenemos los cuños, ¿vale? Los cuños, la diferencia del anverso y del reverso de las monedas. Si esto se tuviera que hacer en tiempo real con los datos extraídos, tardaría minutos. ¿Más o menos? Okay.
I have a question, and it's not just because I want to eat some chocolate. Your system is designed for tangible heritage, but also intangible heritage.
Yes.
Documenting material artifacts are lots and lots of standards explaining how to do that, but that's not the case for intangible heritage. It's much more recent. Could you say a couple of words about your approach and how your system, how do you go about documenting intangible heritage?
Okay, good question. Patrimonio inmaterial es difícil de gestionar. En 2005 el Ministerio de España nos encomendó realizar, a raíz de la conferencia de París, nos pidió hacer un sistema de ficha de inventario de patrimonio inmaterial. A partir de ahí empezamos a analizar qué es lo que era necesario. Como nosotros ya veníamos de trabajar con materiales como audiovisuales y memoria, llegar al patrimonio intangible fue bastante natural. Hablamos de procesos, hablamos de técnicas, el patrimonio material está relacionado, pero es secundario, porque tampoco hay una autoridad que diga este es el patrimonio. Bueno, sí que la hay, pero realmente son las comunidades las que tienen que decidir qué es lo que quieren de patrimonio. Por tanto, son procesos mucho más complejos que el patrimonio tangible. Te podría mostrar el sistema funcionando, pero al final la estructura de Dédalo a nivel interno siempre funciona más o menos igual, porque al tener los datos abstraídos y ser dependientes de la ontología, esto es importante, si cambiamos la ontología, cambiamos el comportamiento de la aplicación. No solo cambiamos la definición, sino que cambiamos el comportamiento, cambiamos la programación. O sea, al mover un nodo dentro de la ontología, lo que estamos haciendo es decirle a Dédalo que esto se comporte de otra manera. Por tanto, cambiar Dédalo es fácil, ¿vale? Y adaptar Dédalo a situaciones complejas es relativamente sencillo. Añadir campos, quitar campos, cambiar el modelo, incluso cambiar la manera de cómo funciona visualmente Dédalo es muy fácil. Por ejemplo, no sé si tengo tiempo para esto, porque esto necesitaría de un congreso solo. Voy a cambiar algo que normalmente no cambio en directo. ¿Vale? Este es un servidor donde nosotros trabajamos, no es un servidor activo, ¿vale? Sino que es un servidor, bueno, podéis ver elefantes y cosas así. Es un servidor de pruebas nuestro, ¿vale? Por eso voy a hacer la prueba aquí. Por ejemplo, tenemos este campo, ¿vale? Que es sexo, ¿vale? Que está señalado como hombre, ¿vale? Y voy a cambiar la ontología. Okay. Este sería el nodo de la ontología. Y voy a poner que esto sea un select, por ejemplo. Select, ok. Y modifico. He modificado la ontología. And ok. We change. Antes era un radio button, ahora es un select. Pero mantenemos el dato. ¿Vale? O sea, no hemos cambiado nada más que la definición del nodo de la ontología. Mola. It's cool.
Just for people here, in case you're unaware, Cidoc has a working group on intangible heritage, documenting intangible heritage. So I think we'll have to be in touch to find out, to look at your
will be great.
approach in more detail. Thank you very much indeed. Those of you who ask questions, come and ask for your chocolate whenever. Let's move on now to the next presentation. Where have we gotten?
Oh, okay.
That's the wrong one. Here we go. Here we are. It's Lily. Yes, Lily. Lily and George. George, are you talking as well?
I'm here as well.
You're here as well.
I'm talking as well.
But you're talking as well. Okay, Lily and George, but not Marla, are going to talk us about the linked art in arches for provenance data, which is about reconciling expectations and enriching something. Okay. Well, we're just waiting for them to get ready. For the benefit of people who are following us online, who can't see where we are, we're in an auditorium at the Biblioteca Nacional, National Library, and I think there's just about 40 people in the audience, something like that. And we have a little bit of daylight and we can see some plants, which is nice. So, are you ready?
Shall I start?
Yes. Please take it away.
Thank you so much. How's the audio? Can you hear me okay? Fantastic. Hola, buenas tardes. Hello, my name is Lily Pergil, and I'm so pleased to be part of the Cidoc CRM program in this beautiful city. And this is actually my first Cidoc conference. So thank you so much to the committee for welcoming me and allowing me to share some of our work with you all today. So I am the Director for Collections and Content Management Systems at the J. Paul Getty Trust, which most people just call Getty or the Getty. My colleague, George Brusaker from Token Solutions, and I want to share a bit about our work moving the Getty's provenance index to linked data. And I just want to make note that clearly we are not the only two people working on this project. I'd like to acknowledge Mala, who couldn't be with us here today. And also we've got some partners in the room and other team members. So this was really a group presentation. So this is about the Getty Provenance Index, and I was curious to know how many people in the room are familiar with the Getty Provenance Index. Getty people can't raise their hand. Great. So this is really a story about not only the Getty Provenance Index and the data, but it's also a story about a data model profile called Linked Art and an open source platform called Arches. But really importantly, it's also about our users. And in this presentation, users mean, when I say users, I'm talking about our staff users, not our public users, but our internal staff, the catalogers and data curators who manage the data. So I'd like to jumpstart. I think some of us always assume people know what the Getty is, but I'd like to just give a little background on who we are as an organization. And this is an image of the main Getty Center campus in Los Angeles, California. And this campus opened in 1997. And it's lovely. It's a beautiful campus, and I feel very fortunate to work there. And my office is right there with the red dot, with the red arrow. So I work in a unit called Getty Digital, and that serves as the technical unit for the entire organization. Our scope includes traditional IT services, academic, cultural heritage computing, and digital production. We have 4 programs: Conservation Institute, that's world-class leading in conservation science; a research institute, which has one of the largest art historical libraries in the world; and a foundation, which is our philanthropic arm. I'm providing grants, I think, to some of you who may be in the audience to attend Cidoc. And of course, we have the museum, and we actually have 2 of them, one in Los Angeles and one in Malibu. We have over 1,000 employees in those 2 locations. And I invite you all to visit us. And please do let us know if you come to Los Angeles. So just some numbers to share here about the kind of the size of the data that we have on campus, which is pretty enormous. And for those of you who are soccer fans, 222 football fields worth of archival material and special collections is a lot of fields. It's a lot of fields. And it's interesting because we have a museum, but in the Research Institute, in the library, many of those objects and materials in the library are museum quality material in and of themselves. So we have a number of digital products, and some, I hope that you're familiar with some of them. The crown jewels, of course, are the Getty vocabularies that many of us use. It's also a kind of a newer project that the Getty is really proud to be developing, and that's used around the world by the built heritage community. And it's being expanded to include conservation science. So Arches for Science is something that's being worked on. And we're using it for different use cases internally at the Getty that we'll talk about as well. And of course, the third bullet point there is the Getty Provenance Index, and that's the focus of our talk today. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Getty Provenance Index, it's a research resource that began by the Getty's first curator of paintings in the 1970s. The resource has morphed over time from being a print publication to being available as a CD-ROM, to making its debut as an online resource in the 90s, and is evolving again into a robust linked open data set. And this project is now managed by the Getty Research Institute. but we partner with them on this technical project. The Provenance Index documents the buying and selling of European art from the 16th to the 20th century, making it a significant scholarly resource to document art markets and the history of collecting. So we're currently working on a project that we call the Provenance Index Remodel Project, which was initially framed as a migration project, but it's really much, much more than that. The Provenance Index data still resides in the original flat file database when it was first automated in 1984, called STAR. And while that's proven to be a workhorse, it's still running. It still is what's populating our online presence. It's over time for us to modernize the platform. So the Provenance Index continues to grow and aims to broaden the scope of documentation it contains. As has been an essential scholarly resource for art historians in the 20th century, we want to position the index to continue to evolve to support research and computational research methods in the 21st. In a nutshell, that means we're moving the data to a new platform, namely Arches, from its original flat file system, and transforming the data to linked data using the linked art profile of the CRM. And this is just to illustrate an example of the data in our legacy system, which is the STAR record. And we have 2 million of these in our current platform, and how kind of the entities map. And as you can see, the data documents a particular sale in London by Christie's, and the sale price, the title of the work, the name of the artist associated, etc. So I want to talk a little bit about the project journey. It seems like a technical one, and that's certainly part of it, but it's really all about the people and having the right people in the right positions for this project. The project started with a grand vision in 2016 with high expectations for a somewhat speedy migration. It has not been that. The reality is that the project is a research project, in my view, in and of itself. And basically, as we figure out how to do the work, we didn't have a roadmap to move data into a linked data system of record. We've done a lot of work with linked data across the organization, but this will be the first time that we are actually not taking data out of a system of record and transforming it into linked data, but actually working natively within a linked data schema within the production database. So we're learning how to, over the period since 2016, we've been learning how to work with that data that was accumulated over 4 decades, and clean and parse so many strings and multitudes of practice to contend with. And cleaning those strings doesn't always lend itself to automation. And I think that that's something that people need to understand, is that not everything can be solved programmatically. We have ambiguous data. We have fields that are not explicit, so you need implicit knowledge to understand what they mean. We have overloaded fields that have all kinds of different data in them, and we have a multitude, as I said, a multitude of practice. We've also had bumps along the way. All of us have in the past few years with COVID, but we've also had a couple of reorganizations that have disrupted our project a bit. And we've had staff attrition, and none of the technical team that started this project remain at the Getty. So the project landed in my department to carry out the implementation in 2021. And we assembled a new team with a new user-centered focus, meaning we're focusing on staff and staff adoption of linked open data concepts, and understanding what Arches is and linked art, and how to actually be working with a linked data set. But we actually needed to win the trust of the Provenance Department staff. We needed to convey that the technologists respected the data, and we needed to help our colleagues understand that where we were headed and having them work in a linked data management platform, while their data in workflows would look vastly different. So as I mentioned, I view this project as a research and development project. Arches and linked data are significant aspects of our overall digital strategy going forward at Getty. This is not a one-off project, but as I said, it is the first of its kind at scale at the Getty. And we will soon be supporting more Arches instances for different data sets where catalogers need to be actively working in the system. So my aim for this project is really to lower the effort required for our next project, and hopefully for all of you who go down the same path. As the Getty, we hold a unique place in the cultural heritage community to be able to experiment and innovate and make some really big mistakes and help build methodologies and enhance open source software. So in this project, we're doing just that. And it's something that we do want to continue to share out with the community. From wearing my managerial hat, my goals are threefold for this project. I want to enhance the Arches platform as our linked data system of record and contribute those enhancements back to the community. I want to develop a migration to linked data methodology that can be repeated internally and externally. And I want to learn how to train and document the models and the linked data concepts in a way that can really help users transition from working in flat or relational databases into a linked data environment. So with that, I'll pass it to George, and he's going to tell you more about Arches linked data and how we're enhancing our process for our staff users. Yeah.
Right. So I joined the team under Lily and with Mala, who couldn't be here today, so I'm filling her shoes. As it started to make this transition to the idea of a sort of user-centered focus of development. So that's what I want to speak to, of that process that we've been working on and developing to really handle, as Lily underlined, this incredibly valuable research resource that's incredibly large and is very complex under the hood because of the long history of curation in a more simple platform that is strong, as it has lasted this long, but not suited to handle the complexity of data that it actually holds. So first, I want to take a step back and talk about two strategic decisions that stood underneath the project from the start. One was to meet the goal of going to linked semantic data to join with and be a member of the linked art community, which is a project that involves a number of institutions who want to adopt the Cidoc CRM standard, but they work together to decide exactly how they're going to implement that standard for the reason of really getting to the last 100% of that goal of having not just theoretically, but actually compatible data. So that has been a cornerstone of what we wanted to do, to follow with, learn from, and enrich the linked art standard. Now how to go backwards. Another fundamental decision was to adopt the Arches platform. And so to give some background on Arches, it's an open source platform that's been developed to support cultural heritage documentation. It's been sponsored by Getty Conservation Institute and the World Monuments Fund, and developed by Farallon Geographics since 2013. A main reason to adopt it, given our open linked open data strategy and our linked art strategy, is the fact that it natively supports building semantic data. It also, and this is very important, can act as a system of record. So it has that combination of having linked open data, but having a record that you can build your information around, which is very important for this transition from STAR to a system that is still going to be managed not just as a search platform, but as a management of records platform. And it has a very powerful technology stack that building off of the semantic data can do all sorts of interesting visualization, GIS, graph display, advanced search. So many of the capabilities that we need to provide to the users in the end. Over here. So that was the tool that we wanted to put into the hands of our users, together with the linked art modeling, in order to give them a system that's expressive and as powerful as the data that they're actually curating. So it gave us a lot of possibilities because it's a flexible, open system that doesn't force you to document anything, but allows you to implement models that you want to implement. It has a rich vocabulary manager, which allows us to import the custom research of the provenance into that system and enrich it. And I already mentioned the search features, etc. And Lily will talk about work that we're doing to go even further with the system and increase its capacity for doing the kinds of heavy work that a research project that deals with 20 million records has to do in terms of being able to bulk update and manage a very, very large corpus in an editing capacity. So obviously, a project of this size has a lot of potential challenges that need to be met. There are 3 million source records that translate into 20 million semantic records once you scale them up with the semantic representation. That means you need to bring together multiple teams that are the users who understand the data and are going to tell us what it should be, the conceptual modelers who have to bring that into linked art or extend linked art, and developers who are building the systems to do the complex transformation of the originally flat data into a very extended data pattern. And that means along the way that users have to go from a system that they've been using for 30 years in some cases into a completely different mindset. So you can't just drop it as if from heaven and expect that they'll use it, like it, or understand it. So that's been core to understand, is that we have to walk together with them and have them co-developers in the process. Other problems are that our amount of records is huge. So we have to deal with the performance and scalability issue. And then in this whole process, because we're bringing all these teams together, we have to figure out how to share knowledge across teams and across people. So there's no one weak point where somebody disappears and suddenly we're back to square one, which happens. So I'll try to convey this user-centric approach that we've been working on telescopically. So what we've learned through trial and error is to have this user-centric approach where we have our users, the editors and curators of this knowledge, as at the center of all the decisions we're making, which includes the data modeling, which includes the UI design, which includes figuring out the workflows for integrating the data. We've done that because we need to move along with them, and we've already experienced trying to do it for them and just drop it in front of them. It's like a space alien. So it's much better to work together and develop the data models, the data views, and the transformation process as a team. We've learned to do that by having weekly sessions where we bring all the different teams together and we talk about the state of affairs and move issues forward. We have an agile iterative development, which is supported by a JIRA process, which I'll show you in a second. And together with setting up project milestones, etc., we're able to actually push this forward and get towards the end of our work. So you've probably seen a JIRA board before, inspired by Toyota and the Kanban process. We've really put this at the center of how we're communicating, because we're different groups in different countries and different time zones with different specializations. So we have a process where we create issues for all the activities that we need to work on, and they get passed to the various teams, and there's a flow to have it checked recursively and sent back if it needs to be sent back or sent forward, so that we can really monitor and manage where we're at and if we've gotten the things that we need to get done. Now I'm going to show you a few slides that sort of give a flavor of how we've gotten to where we finally got to. We, at a certain moment in this user-centric reorganization of how we were doing things, we realized we had to go back to basics and find, this may not look simple to you, but it's, if you've been following the conference, you've seen more complicated Cidoc diagrams than that. So we've tried to find ways to reduce the complexity of understanding and visualizing what we're going to do to go from a flat model to a semantic ontological model where we're really talking about events and people and how we divide those and why and what it means we'll be cataloging later. So we've created data objects that we can all understand, so we can decide that we really have covered the information space that they are aiming to cover, and that we'll be able to answer the questions that they aim to answer. We've taken that and we've developed a system partially exclusively for this project called Zalige. Basically, the notion is document the semantic patterns that you're building so that you know what you've built and what you're aiming towards as a target model. It's not just a conceptual woolly diagram that you're aiming for, but it's a strict, we're going to hit this and we've agreed to this also so that you have something to benchmark against afterwards, and which you can share with others if they want to understand what you've done. That gives us a groundwork for making, and this is, I think, a huge thing, to make the conceptual map, we'll go over by a minute or two, to make the conceptual map between what the users have been building for 20 years in terms of a flat data file to where it's going to go in this collaboratively built semantic data model. So we basically use that documentation and we do a correspondence between the original fields and the models we're going to, and that allows the users to really do the QA on where this data was before and where it's landing in the end. And we even go back to matching the original rows, because all this documentation comes from rows in provenance, different types of provenance documents. And so you can really follow from this column in the original document went into this original system column and was documented in this way, and now we've transformed it into that model in this field in the new system. And that sort of provenance is really important to establish that we've actually done the data migration and management that we hoped for. And this is just to show you how it actually gets implemented. So that plan for having a conceptual model can be built out using a UI interface in Arches. And that's something that's also available for our users to look at critically and tell us if we've got it right, etc. And so we've used that in order to build out all the models and put in place a system that is slowly but surely transforming and consolidating the old star provenance information into Arches. And now I'd like to give the word back for a minute or two more to Lily, if that's okay.
2 more minutes.
Okay, I'll be really fast.
Gracias.
Thank you. Yeah, just quickly, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the development projects that we're working on to extend Arches capability. One of the things that I think is really important for cataloger sort of happiness, if you will. We talk about developer happiness a lot, but I think we should think about data curation happiness and cataloger happiness is what those reports look like. What do the editing interfaces look like for people? And this is just, we're still actively working on our custom reports, but we're moving to a table format. Arches has an out-of-the-box report that's fine, but in terms of the volume of data that we had that we wanted our editors to be able to see at a glance, we decided to embark on a table approach. You can see a little of that here at the bottom of the screen. And I just showed this example where you can also embed images. If you've got that kind of data where you have images associated with the data, it's really easy to just embed those images. And in this particular case, we're pointing out to IIIF image. This is something I'm really super excited about, and this is kind of the first time we've been talking about this, but we're getting, I think, a final build of this at the end of the week. But we're editing at scale within Arches to do global find and replace, and to actually work with the data natively within the system. So you don't have to be a developer to be able to, access the API and do some changes. We really wanted to lower the the barrier of entry for people to actually, for our data curators to have more power so they could execute their own editorial tasks. And so this is where you can, this is just a screenshot of what this looks like. And it's, we're still reviewing it, but just a quick change from vase of flowers to vase of sunflowers that it shows you kind of a before and after before you actually hit go, which is, I think is really great. And this is also comes with a bulk edits dashboard, similar to what you presented earlier, where you can actually roll back changes and see who made those changes and kind of get analytics about the changes that you did make. So we're super excited about this work, and we really think it'll be a benefit to all of the ArchIS community. So next steps. We have 4 discrete data sets. In the end, we expect 20 million provenance resources created. We're going to continue to enhance the user interface. We're hoping for production launch in summer of 2024, so stay tuned. And we want to design sustainable contribution processes for future provenance data for the database to continue to grow. And super happy to be here and present this for the first time at Cidoc CRM. And coming soon, we have what we're calling OG arches. OG is a type of arch. And this is basically an ArchIS package that contains all of the linked data models embedded. And my colleague Alyssa Lorea worked on this with George. And it's a collaborative project between our teams to release this out into the community. So if you want to get started with arches and you want to get started with linked art, this provides you with a package. You don't have to start from scratch. You can just load this into your ArchIS system and trim the data model from there for what you need. So we hope to have this out in the fall, probably in a month or so. So partners and collaborators, some of you are in the audience, really Sketty folks, Farallon Geographics, Talking Solutions, of course, and Advanced Services Engineering. And I just want to thank you all for listening.
Thank you very, very much for that wonderful presentation. I think we have time for just one question, maybe. Is there anybody who... Yes.
First of all, thank you for the really nice presentation. It's really nice to see how it comes along. I was sort of processing how this can be useful for other organizations. And what I think is at our museum, there is a lot of provenance research going on, but we have really trouble capturing it in the right way. So we have these provenance sentences which are structured. We have auction catalogs. And I was wondering, what sort of provenance information are you really capturing in this database? Is that the same sort of auction catalogs and the annotations in those auction catalogs? And what do you advise other organizations heavily invested in this type of research to do? Also create a separate sort of source system for this information, or expand the collection management systems that we got? Do you have any advice in that regard?
One of the things I think I mentioned on the slide, but I didn't articulate, is the defining the scope of how much, what you're modeling sort of at the onset, and that can be a cautionary tale. We've modeled things very deeply and very granularly, and that's why I consider it a bit of a research project. So I think, do you want to talk to the shape of the model a little bit?
So if you see the linked art site, you could see, I mean, you've met it, you would see most of what's already in the provenance model. So it covers the ability to talk about acquisition, transfer of custody, payments, rights transactions, promising, these sorts of things. And I mean, that's been informed by, I mean, in that way, it's ground up, that it's from, you know, multiple dealers' catalogs, from auction catalogs. So it's empirically grounded in that sense. And in terms of how, I mean, there are experts, neither of us are experts in provenance. Sandra, our colleague, would answer better. But there are colleagues here who are experts in provenance who could speak the machine learning afterwards. But I would say that I mean, probably if you were to use an instance of OG, for example, for managing richer provenance records, you could make just a connection over to like the stub record of the ID for your actual collections management system. You know, that would be one modality you could use, and then say, well, I'll just enrich provenance here and I'll let collections management do what it does best. It's one.
Yeah, and I'll just say that we did use, I mean, historically at the Provenance Index, we've used scripts and whatnot to extract data from auction catalogs where there were, you know, patterns that we could get valuable data from. And I assume that we'll do that going forward as well to help populate that. So to look, you know, just to make it manageable in terms of the amount of data that we ask humans to create.
Thanks.
I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to stop now, but yeah, allow me to give you your chocolate. Thank you. And ask, as I mentioned earlier, our presentation from Alberto Pacheco unfortunately had to cancel, so we're going straight on to Christina McGregor, who is from University College in London. Okay, Christine is going to be telling us something about foregrounding open science at UCL, University College. University College has been familiar to me all my life. There's a hospital just opposite called University College Hospital, and I was born there. So it's like coming home.
Thank you, Nick. And thank you to the committee for inviting me to come and talk to you today. I'm going to update on several UCL initiatives in support of open science practice. It's really just going to be headlines in the very short time available. I quote that UCL is committed to being a global leader in effecting a transition to an open science landscape. So it's quite an ambitious bar that has been set by the senior management. The founders of University College London were inspired by the radical ideas of 18th century philosopher Jeremy Bentham, whose skeletal remains are kept at his request as an auto icon, padded and dressed in his own clothes and sitting in the glass vitrine at the entrance to the UCL Student Centre. UCL prides itself on its founding principles, which included academic excellence and research aimed at addressing real-world problems, principles which are just as relevant and universal today. Established in 1826, UCL was created to open up education in England for the first time to students of any race, class, background, or religion. And by 1878, we were the first English university to welcome women on equal terms with men. So our founders effectively tore up the rule book. And this radical heritage persists today, so that for present-day staff and students, being disruptive thinkers and able to disagree well is a defining part of UCL identity and practice. So I was interested to hear that Nick is UCL alumni, and I'm sure can disagree very well in debate. Okay, so in December 2021, UCL Culture, responsible for 3 public museums, the UCL Art Museum, the Grant Museum of Zoology and Comparative Anatomy, and the Petrie Museum of Egyptian and Sudanese Archaeology, and associated collections of science and pathology, formally merged with UCL Libraries, Special Collections and Archives to become Library Culture, Collections and Open Science. A lot of words in our name. So we've become this new super department. So broadly speaking, as head of collections management, I work with around 180,000 objects and associated documentation. So in fact, almost everything that's not a book or an archive or a special collection item. Our museums are open to the public and accredited under the UK Arts Council Museum Accreditation Scheme. These museums and collections are as old as the university, and they represent an uninterrupted continuum of object-based and specimen learning. We have a new object-based learning laboratory, which is the latest iteration of this practice and contains objects from across the collections. Other material is brought in from academic departments on a daily, weekly or termly basis for teaching sessions. And this merger of culture with libraries capitalises on the shared wealth and richness of our cultural assets, with some collections and their corresponding archives being aligned for the first time in almost 200 years. So the sum of our parts is now truly greater than the whole. In 2021, senior management took the opportunity to foreground open science within our newly created department's name, so signalling an embedded planning intent around open science. But prior to this, the UCL Office for Open Science was already located within the library, and a number of early open science initiatives originated from this office. So, for example, we were the first fully open access university press, which was established in 2015. So when I listened to my Pro-Vice Provost, Dr. Paul Ayres, talking about open science, he's really clear that leadership and advocacy are key, and that the process of transitioning to an embedded open science landscape and agenda requires a focal point, and also that this process is necessarily long, detailed, and has many fronts to it. Open science can be hard to pin down in all its meanings and tricky to see the day-to-day application. However, we subscribe to the European Union 8 pillars of open science, which you can see on the slide. And this provides us with a clear framework and a starting point for this work. At UCL, we define open science as focused on inclusive approaches to producing, curating, disseminating, and evaluating research and our educational outputs. And in my mind, a key part of open science is to see it as an umbrella that describes and codifies much of what we already do, maybe refine it or adjust it, and then present it in a way that makes sense to the outside world, so that the connections between research outputs and public benefit are clear and tangible. But clearly, open science is much more than that, and it's also a key driver for innovation and creative thinking, providing an exciting formal policy framework to work outside the box and allow our publics to inform our research agenda. And in this way, we can strengthen and promote the symbiotic relationship between us and our public. I'm going to take a really quick look at 3 collections-related initiatives, starting with the Research Institute for Collections. So this was created a couple of years ago to provide a focus for the library, museum, and departmental collections through a variety of projects and initiatives. And one of these is a new collection fellowship, which has been launched last year. We offer 2 fellowships per year, intended to find new ways of engaging with underexplored collection stories and presenting them to wider society. The aim is that one of the fellowships will focus on the UCL museum collections and the other on materials held in special collections, but we're also very open to proposals that might work across both. So possible research areas include, but are not limited to, this range of topics. I'll just read some of them out for the translation. So we have contested histories, women and art, empire, disruptive politics, decolonizing natural history collections, or in fact, decolonizing any aspect of our collections would be appropriate. Big focus on women and readers. Eugenics is a particular aspect of UCL's history and something that it's wanting to be more open about and get to grips with, climate justice, and so on. We encourage research that looks at our collections differently and finds new ways of exploring them. So particularly looking at under-researched aspects within them and creating original, perhaps surprising, and sometimes challenging academic and public outputs. Visiting fellows will receive a grant, a workspace, and access to staff and collections. In exchange for this, we would require some achievable and I think very broadly scoped outputs. Naturally, we would want to be acknowledged in any publications or at any events. The criteria to apply are very broad. There is one potential sticking point, which is the eligibility to work in the UK. But this is definitely not an academic only fellowship. It's very broad, and it's about this idea of open science and public and really opening up those conversations. Okay, the next example is a rights holder clearance project. So we all know that lack of copyright permission is a barrier to access and knowledge exchange, and that the process of securing rights is time consuming, it's expensive, and it's a challenge, particularly to smaller museums and collections. So conceived and run by the UCL Art Museum in collaboration with the UCL Advanced Research Computing Centre, this project aims to rethink the process and methodology of rights tracing and recording, and to develop a toolkit to simplify the process and offer a more sustainable solution to this problem. Where have I gone? Okay, so the project is using REDCap, which is a secure licensed web application for building and managing online surveys and databases. It was developed for clinical research. So it's very secure, it's GDPR compliant. And a prototype was created to capture rights permissions from owners, and also to capture the due diligence audit trail for orphan works, and to generate digital licensing agreements. The process eliminates the need for multiple mail-outs, either paper or electronic. And also the project includes an API to link to back to the collections management system. Okay, and that's one more example from the rights project. Then I have my last example, which is the UCL policy review. So we are the largest university in the UK, and we are striving to embed open science principles in all of our policies. So any of the policies that we're working with and reviewing and upgrading, it's really quite fundamental that we go back to those 8 pillars of open science and really think about how those relate to the policy, and how we can make sure that we're absolutely embedding this from the top. So I'm currently working in partnership with a London-based organisation called the Institute of Art and Law. They're an educational organisation that was founded to research UK and international law in relation to cultural heritage. They've helped us benchmark against developments in legislation, practice and ethics. They were also commissioned by Arts Council England to update the sector guidance for the UK for restitution and repatriation that was published last year. So they're extremely well placed to be consulting with us on this work. And as a side note, I would say that I'm very keen to make connections with colleagues in any organisations that are working on a similar suite of policies, particularly interested to connect with people that might be looking at repatriation and restitution, potentially from the perspective of making a claim, because being in England and in Europe, I tend to be, the people I have access to tend to be the people that are working with responding to claims, and I very much think we need to understand more about the other side of the process. I'm still new to open science and very much on a learning curve of thinking through how and where we can embed this in the day-to-day running of documentation and collections management. I can see where we already align with this agenda, and with the support of the UCL Office for Open Science, which has the aim to change the way we think, work and act, I'm beginning to apply this lens to emerging strategy, policy and plans. I'm encouraged by the institutional and open science community acknowledgement that the process and transition is not straightforward and fast. It does require cultural change, a better response to interdisciplinary research, combined with a clearer understanding of our communities and our wider societies. I previously mentioned leadership and advocacy, and the UCL Office for Open Science also hosts an annual Open Science webinar and is involved in ongoing policy work and advocacy to help all parts of UCL understand and adopt the same agenda. So I'm excited to see what new collections-based opportunities and initiatives emerge as academics, museum teams and student and public communities are enabled, and I think even empowered in an embedded open science landscape at UCL and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. And we do have time for some questions. And yes, we have time for some questions. Remember, there's chocolate on the table. Yes, George. Please.
Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask if as part of the open science commitment, I know that there's a lot of interest in the FAIR process and in research data management plans and that sort of thing. Is that a big topic within this overall large scope of work that you have to address?
Yeah, so we, as UCL Culture, we were a very small minor team and department, and we've moved into this super department of the library. So to put it in sort of relative scale, within UCL Culture museums, we were around 40 staff, and the library is 350 staff. And the library is incredibly well funded comparatively because it's just so core and fundamental to the work of the university. So I feel that within my very specific area of responsibility, there's a big kind of catch up to do in terms of thinking. So that's really exciting for us because in terms of the library systems, they're much more advanced and embedded. And we've got our museum data and information that it needs a lot of work. To be frank, we're in a kind of open forum here, you know, just things are quite fundamental and basic as our asset management around our collections information. Our digital asset management isn't as evolved as it needs to be. So I'm actually really excited that this merge has happened, and I can see some real possibilities, but we've kind of got to go through the pain barrier, I think, first, to get to a more level playing field.
Thank you. I'll give it back. I'll just make a tiny comment and say that we worked on a project called Artists in Context with the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and they presented 2 days ago, and they were working on sort of parallel issues of working in a common and trying to create a common environment and looking at data quality and the kinds of projects you were projecting of. Now that we've merged, you know, how can we do scholarship on top of that, and how can we feed that back into the overall quality of our data? So I'm sure they'd be interested to talk to you.
So I think that was my colleague Nina Perlman, Dr. Nina Perlman.
No, the presenter was Bree Medvey, but
Okay.
yeah, in any case, just a comment.
Thank you.
I'll give the word to other people.
Otra preguntas. Any other questions? I have a question.
Of course you do.
I also have questions. It was interesting, these two presentations in a way. I mean, I hope I'm getting this right. You were talking about the technology necessary in order to achieve something, whereas you're talking about what you want to achieve. And so I'm tempted to ask you the question, has this implied some changes in the technology? Have you had to adapt your documentation systems in any way to be able to fulfill the open science mission?
It's certainly given me the leverage. I've been at UCL now for 5 years, and I've been saying asset management, digital assets, come on guys, we need to sort this out. And actually now I've got that leverage, and particularly since I've had the policy work brought into my portfolio, so I can embed it at the policy level. And actually, because I'm now part of the library team with special collections and archives that have these much more evolved systems, finally we can approach it from both ends. So yeah, it's early days yet.
Thank you very much. Okay, any more questions? No? Yes? Okay, well, in that case, it just remains for me to thank everybody, the speakers and all of you in the audience, and those of you at home watching us, I hope, on the webcast, and look forward to seeing you later. I think there's an excursion now. Do you want to say something about it?
Yes.
Please do.
I brought good news, so I hope to get a chocolate. The bus is waiting for us, for the ones who signed for the trip to Frida Kahlo, right next to the museum, the MUAC. So we have to run.